Welcome to Rebecca Sounds Reveille. Today we have a very inspirational guest who has so much to share and so much she has done in her life that I think you are going to be just as inspired as her readers are. She has been an author, currently an author, writes all the time. She has been in radio, and she is teaching and just providing so much inspiration to youth. Her series is Inspirational Christian Faith, and I would like to bring her on now. So we give a great big shout out to Lorana Hannah Hoops. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
I am just delighted to have you on the show. I've been super excited to hear all about the things and share all the things that you have done with viewers. So let's start with your current work and your series that you have been working on.
Yeah, so the series is titled the Heartbeat series. That was the name of the original book when it wasn't going to be a series. It was just going to be itself. So it started as Heartbeats. And then when I finished that one, my mom said, so what are you going to do for the next book? And I was like, I don't know if there is a next book. But a next book came, and then a third book came. And when the second and third book came, I realized I needed a name of the series. So it became the Heartbeat series. And then the first book changed from the title of Heartbeats to the title of The Power of Prayer, but a Heartbeats novel. So, and then I'm currently working on the fourth book, which will be titled A Father's Love, and I'm hoping to have it out by the end of the month.
This is fantastic, and I congratulate you on everything that you're doing. So what age group is this genre?
So this genre is written for adult fiction, but because it's faith-based, it's super clean. So I think as girls as young as 16 could read this. I've had even a few of my students who are aspiring writers who have read it. It's nothing that I wouldn't let my own daughter read when she gets that old. And because it's such a powerful message for women, I think teenage girls all the way up to, women in their 40s and 50s will really enjoy the story.
This is fantastic. And starting out from just having one book and then creating this entire series has been totally a work of art for you. The canvas that has sort of been unfinished. And so is there another book in store?
There is actually. In fact, I just started writing a children's series. My oldest son just turned 7, and he's been reading the Magic Tree House books, and they're great. But I opened them up and I was like, I could write something like this that would be a little bit higher level because it's all really simple sentences. So I sat down one Saturday and I hammered out a book. It's called The Wishing Stone is going to be the title of that series. And the first one is called Dangerous Dinosaur. And it's all about, my kids are actually my characters. So it's all about my son Spencer, who goes on his way home from school. He meets this mysterious cowboy who gives him a wishing stone. And the stone allows him to jump into the books that he's reading and interact with the characters. And so the first book, he gets to go back to prehistoric time and help a cave boy there save the village from a dinosaur.
This is a lot of fun. So you have a couple of different age groups, and what you're sharing here is that it's clean. And in this day and age, it's really difficult to find something that is sort of left to your imagination, where you still can have your own creative side when you're reading. Things aren't just laid out for you and you're absorbing all this clutter. You are allowed to just allow yourself to be thinking as you're going. I really love that. So with these two different groups here, what do you think was the most inspiring part of all of it? Was it gearing it to those age groups, or the imagination that you were able to really bring to life on the pages?
Yeah, I think it was a little different for each book. So the first the Heartbeat series was really inspired from like personal events. We happened to be out doing a walk one day, and I was pulling my daughter from a car, and I just sort of got the inspiration for the book. And I'd been wanting to write forever, but I had always gotten to this point where about 20 pages in, I was like, I don't really know where I'm going with this. Because to write an 80,000 word book is actually a lot of work.
It is a lot of work.
It is. And so I finally just started getting ideas, and I would kind of push them aside and be like, oh, I can't go anywhere with that. But I finally it would keep me up at night. And so I finally just started writing, and I would just write until I ran out of ideas for that night. And then I would save and I would put it away. And a month later, the book was done. And I was like, whoa, it just 80,000 words just jumped on the pages. So that was the inspiration for Heartbeats. With the kids book, it was a little different. It was more about, I don't typically write fantasy, and so these are more of a fantasy. And I was really trying to stay in that age range. So that was a challenge too, of like trying not to have too hard of words, but hard enough to challenge them. And so that was really fun. It's fun to do a different type of genre.
I think with your background, though, you're really able to hit the mark in a lot of different areas. So let's go back kind of as you're blooming out of high school. What direction did you start going?
I actually wanted to be an actress when I first got out of high school. I did theater for 4 years. In fact, I still do a lot of theater. But my dad told me that I would never make it in Hollywood because I had too many morals. So I said, okay. And I like to argue. I did debate in high school as well. So I went to college originally to go into law. I had a pre-law major and a theater major. Somewhere along the lines, I ended up working for an attorney. He was an injury attorney, and I realized I didn't want to be anything like him. So I kind of veered away from law and ended up in radio. And I did radio for about 4 years, which was awesome. I enjoyed every minute of that until I met my husband. And then when we moved here to Washington State, we weren't near any radio stations. So I was like, okay, what am I going to do now? So I dabbled in management. I dabbled in insurance. I ended up working as an educational assistant. And it was there that I realized, like, I could probably teach kids. So I went back to college and got my master's in teaching. And that's what I've been doing for the last 12 years.
And so with the combination of all of that, you were really able to adapt to a lot of different things and be able to then bring them again to life. There's a couple of points that I want to kind of make here real quick. One, you're from Texas.
I am.
Yes. Woohoo! So, and that's exciting too. You would think that there's not a lot going on, but really in Texas there is a lot going on, and it sounds to me like you were able to really flourish, and even more so now that you've moved to Washington. But something that you have said, and something that I really wanted to point out in your work, your current work with your writing, is that morals in this day and age are very, very different. And I think that this is a really perfect time to introduce values all over again, because society has stemmed away from traditional values and taken on something very different. So I'm very, very delighted by this. What are your readers saying when they share with you what they've thought of the book, or what kind of feedback are you getting?
So the Heartbeat series, all three of the books so far have 5-star reviews. I've had several people who have come up and just said, I really enjoyed this story. In fact, my second book is a little bit darker, and one of my friends was like, I liked it, but it was almost too dark for me. I needed to go back to the lighter side, just because of the subject matter. The biggest thing though was I actually had a parent at my school who read it just for support, and it turned out he was a man, which I thought, I'm not really sure that you're not really my target audience, but go ahead. And he came back to me and said, your books uncovered something I didn't even know that I was feeling. And I've realized why I've done some of the things I've done for the last 40 years. And he came in and just like thanked me for just writing down what opened his eyes to something that he had kind of been blocking and not dealing with. And he's made some like giant strides in getting over and coming to terms with, something that happened in his past. And that was really cool to know that it had affected someone on a personal level.
Well, that just affected me in a way where I'm actually having the hairs stand up all over, because when lives are touched and changed, that is such an amazing thing. I am very, 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 very passionate about helping other people. And trauma happens to be a specialty of mine. So when I hear that someone has been able to receive a message or have a revelation about something that is so life-changing, to me, that speaks volumes, pun intended.
Absolutely.
And yeah, it's just absolutely huge. So it's amazing too how many different people that you're going to affect when you did not even think, as you said, that this was going to be catered to a male audience. You were primarily
right.
thinking that it was for females. So I think you have opened up an opportunity and for many, many people. And so if they were going to pick up a copy of one in your series, would you recommend the first one? Start with the first.
I probably would either recommend the first or the second. They stand alone, so you could do either. The first book is a little bit more factual based. I did a lot of research when I was writing the first one, so it follows the storyline. It's got the nice romance, but it's got a lot of facts in there as well. So if you're kind of curious about the topic and the subject and you're not really sure what's out there, that would be a really great place to start. If you're not so curious about the subject, you just want a really good story, then I would recommend the second book, Where It All Began, because that actually goes back and tells the life of one of the characters, and it's written in first point of view, and it just sucks you in and you really experience what she experiences all the way through. And that one really has a focus on like God's forgiveness and healing powers as well, which I think is really an important aspect to read too.
I absolutely agree with you. And I also think that once someone discovers how an author writes and they get hooked, they will go back to the beginning and they will want to read everything that author has written, because it's going to be either inspirational to them or bring out creative flow or even be a stress reliever. Oh, wow, I can actually get into something here that is not allowing me to think about anything else at the moment. And we live in such a fast-paced world and society. So being able to not only look at a character, but just being able to think about how it's all inclusive in a way. Not only is it broadening your creative imagination when you're reading, but it can be inclusive. For example, the person that had told you about how inspiring and life-changing that was. So to have that spectrum is pretty big, and I congratulate you on that. Many people do not have that ability. They cannot write in a spectrum where it's inclusive and then outgoing expression as well. So this is really exciting. What has been the biggest challenge though in getting your books out there? Because we're in digital age and we've got self-publishing, digital publishing, so POD, and then you've got Amazon and all of these things. What do you find is the biggest challenge? And then the next question is, are you exclusive in Christian bookstores or are you all over?
So let me address the first one. The first biggest challenge has been promotional. Being self-published, I did my first book originally through Christian Faith Publishing and didn't have a really good experience. So I did a lot of research before I did the second one and decided, I'm an English teacher. I can do most of my own grammar work. Like I can self-publish. So I ended up hiring someone off of Fiverr to do my covers because I don't have the graphic artist background. And she did an amazing job. But then it's just getting people to go to your book, because there are so many books on Amazon, that getting your name out there and getting your message out there, that's what's really challenging. And a lot of people won't even look at a book till it has 20, 30, 40, 50 reviews, which takes a long time to build. So that's been probably the biggest challenge, is just finding the best way to advertise, to get the message out there, to have people, stop in and take a look at it. So I ended up putting them on the Kindle Unlimited. So if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can read them for free as well. And then I also added the paperback with the Kindle Match. So if you buy the paperback, you can get the Kindle ebook for free, because I really just wanted to get as many people reading it as possible. So it's not only in Christian bookstores. It's sold through Amazon, and it's also sold through Ingram. So any bookstore, while they may not stock it right now, any bookstore can order from Ingram. So anybody can go to any local bookstore and ask for it, and they can find it on Ingram and get it ordered.
This is really exciting. I am just jazzed. Let's talk a little bit about your radio days too.
Okay. Yeah, I actually started when I was in college. I tried to get on at the college radio station, and the guy told me they didn't have any openings, but I always called in and talked to the DJs at my local radio station. And so one night he said, "Hey, we're looking for some new overnight talent. Why don't you come in and just do an interview?" And I was like, "Well, I don't have any like radio tapes or anything." And he said, "Oh, just, record something real quick." And so on my little cassette deck machine, I did basically like a radio interview like I had done in high school for competition, and brought that in, and ended up getting my first job. I did overnights. So from midnight to 4 a.m. was my shift when I first started. But after that, the morning show co-host left, and I actually got moved up to the morning show. So I did the morning show.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it was Ken and Lori for going on about a year. And then I ended up moving to Midland, Texas, and did some radio there while I was going to school, and then ended up moving back to Lubbock, and I worked the evening shift, so the 7 to 12, or the early morning, the 10 to noon shift. But it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed being on radio.
That's exciting. I mean, you had an around-the-clock experience with radio. Which one did you like the best?
I liked the morning show the best. It was hard to get up, but it was nice to have someone to feed off of, because you weren't in there by yourself. There were a lot of times, especially on that midnight to 6, that it would be a really long shift, because you're in this room all by yourself, and you only have the callers calling in. So a lot of times it would get really lonely in that overnight shift. So I really loved the morning show. And then I got to do, I was also the weather reporter. So anytime there was a severe weather, they would just call me up, and I would have to do remotes over the phone wherever I was for the severe weather. So that was pretty cool.
No chasing tornadoes then?
I did not go chasing tornadoes, no, but I would be the one who would tell you that they were coming.
This is really neat. And so it sounds like between just the two, radio and your books, that it shows how much drive you have, that it also says to the viewers and those who are also listening that you can do anything you want to do, and you don't necessarily have to have something behind your name, but the drive and passion, the attitude and the desire is extremely critical in pursuing your goals.
No, absolutely. And, my third book, it took me a lot longer, because I just would hit these snags, and I was like, oh, I don't know where I'm going with this. But I just kept going back to it, and, spent a little bit longer, but ended up working a lot of nights revising it. And one of my readers wrote back to me and said that it ended up being her favorite book. So I was like, oh, that's good, because I really struggled with writing it. I couldn't decide the point of view I wanted to come from. I couldn't decide which character I wanted to focus on. So yeah, just absolutely having that perseverance and that grit to keep going, even when things get tough, that's really what I think makes it successful.
I agree with you. And being a teacher, what are the challenges that you see there? I know I did substituting for a little while, and I had high school age group, right. And I thought, wow, this is a big challenge, and I am a people person, but confining 30 30 students into one classroom and trying to teach material that maybe they're not necessarily interested in can be pretty difficult. So what challenges do you find?
So I also teach high school age. I have a few middle school classes, but mostly I teach high school age. And while I really love my high schoolers, a challenge that I've been facing the last couple of years is I work at a homeschool co-op. So it's not a traditional school. But we started as a lot of families who didn't want their kids in traditional school because of some of the agenda that was being taught. And then we ended up pulling in a lot of kids who just weren't making it in traditional school due to illnesses or bullying or things like that. And when the two mixed, what I find now is I have a very distinct difference between super religious kids and super kids who are not religious, and trying to find material that's not offensive to one or the other is really challenging, and trying to balance discussions because the viewpoints are just polar opposites. We don't really even have a lot in the middle. We just have both ends.
So this is really interesting, and teaching in this day and age, whether it's in traditional school or non-traditional school, I've got a question, and this has sort of gone on the back burner for a little while since the whole election cycle, maybe over the last year. And unfortunately, it is something that, or I should say fortunately, it is something that needs to be addressed. Well, either way you look at it, unfortunately or fortunately. Fortunately, we should address it right now. Unfortunately, that it has to be addressed at all. And you probably know where I'm going with that, and that's Common Core. Can you share a little bit about that, and maybe some thoughts that you have?
Yeah, so I generally teach English, but I do teach a little math. And when Common Core first came out, I was really against it. Not so much for the English part, because it was pretty similar to the standards we were teaching anyway. And what they ask you to do in English is a skill you should know how to do. It's more about pulling evidence and being able to support your evidence. So I never had a problem with the English part of Common Core, but I did have a problem with the math part, because it just felt like they were trying to make math harder than it had to be. What I have seen since then with my son starting in Common Core is I really think if they had grown Common Core up with kindergartners, we wouldn't be facing this problem, because my son really is seeing a different side of math, and he's able to make some connections that I was like, oh, I didn't really expect a 7-year-old to be able to do that. But he's able to make some connections. But I'm struggling with 7th and 8th and 9th graders who got thrown into the middle of it, who are now having to do this math that's totally foreign to them. We didn't get training on Common Core before they just rolled it out. So it's totally foreign to us as teachers. And I really think that, unfortunately, what happens in education is about every 5 years, they decide it's not working and they change, but they never grow it up. They always just throw it at everybody all at once. And you just can't do that. You need to start when kids are going into kindergarten, and then, teach them along the way, measure that way a couple of years. And then if it's not working, make a change. But trying to throw it at an 8th grader who's been already struggling with math, and then you throw a new math, which is much more challenging at them, it's not going to have the benefits or the examples that they want to come out of it. And the Common Core test, especially for math, is really challenging. Some of the questions that they ask, or the way they try to get the kids to explain it, like I have trouble as a teacher with a master's degree answering some of those questions. It's really not a fair test for kids.
That's very interesting that you say that, because my question or statement was going to be that, so you have students that are going home asking their parents for help, and their parents are lost, and it's not because the parents are uneducated, but they just don't know how this particular system works. What is the biggest change as far as Common Core in compared to a traditional, say, math problem, if you will?
So the biggest challenge for me is I am not a visual thinker. I don't think in pictures. I don't like to draw pictures, and Common Core is very picture related. So they always want you to be drawing pictures. They want you to be thinking in a picture way. I was the type of kid, if you gave me a formula, I could solve any problem. I just wanted the formula. But now they don't want you to just have the formula. They want you to know 7 different ways to work a problem so that if you don't have the formula, you can get to it, which again, has a really good merit behind it, but you can't just throw it at a 7th or 8th grader and expect them to get it, especially when there's kids who've been struggling with basic math, for so long. So that's the real problem, is it still doesn't hit all of the thinkers. If I had been a kid in Common Core math, I would have struggled. And I was a straight A student because I don't think in pictures. I don't think about why I think about things. This whole push on metacognition has always driven me nuts, even as an educator, because I don't think that way. I don't write plot lines for my stories. I don't do outlines for essays. I've just never been the type of person who does that. So whenever I was forced to, I always found that I didn't do as good of a job because I wasn't able to just freely write what was in my head.
I think free flow writing is absolutely awesome. I love to do that because whatever's on my mind, and then I can go back and change the things that I don't like. I understand what you're talking about exactly. And I was just taught, just keep writing, write what you're thinking, and so on and so forth. But what's very interesting though about this, is how different it is. And so you have some people who may not be very knowledgeable on the subject, and they're saying, well, Common Core teaches that 2 + 2 is 7. Can you really sort of give a basis for clarification on that?
Yeah, it really doesn't teach 2 + 2 is 7. What would be a better example is if you were trying to, say, teach a kid 8 + 12, right? In old school math, we would just line them up and we would add 8 + 2 is 10, and we carry the 1, and then we have 1 + 1 is 2. In Common Core math, they would have the kids break them into pictures of 10. So they would say, okay, this one has 8 and this one has 12. Let's take 2 from this one and put it over here on this one so that now this one has 10 and this one has 10. So it's just a different way of moving stuff around. They haven't really changed, like math rules haven't changed. 2 + 2 still equals 4. It doesn't equal 7. But it's having kids line them up in like 1s and 10s and 100s, and then moving them that way so they fill up like a whole 10 block, or a whole 1 block, and then they move it into the 10 block. And then once they fill up a whole 10 block, they move it into the 100 block. It's just a lot of extra steps, I feel. Even when my son showed us, we had a student-led conference, and he was showing us how he was adding these numbers, and he had this great chart. They had all these different colored coins that he would use, but it was like, he was adding 2 numbers. I just wanted to take the paper and show him how to add them, but he was then filling them into like, here's 1,000, here's 8 of this coin, here's 5 of this coin, here's 2 of this coin, and then he was taking and adding it all together. So this math problem that I could do in 30 seconds ended up taking him about 15 minutes to even explain to us.
Interesting.
That, I think, is the hard part. I think the basis of that is it'll get easier for kids and they'll understand why they're doing certain things. But that's the part I haven't seen yet, because even though I've been teaching it for the last 4 years, none of my kids that I've been teaching grew up with it. They all got thrown in about 6th or 5th grade. So it'll be interesting to see when the kids who have been doing it, the current 4th graders or 5th graders now, when they get to be in my math class, if it's making a difference. Because right now, I'm seeing good things in my son, but I can't say that it's helping older kids who didn't grow up with it.
That's very interesting. And so now, what is your favorite subject then to teach?
My favorite subject to teach is actually theater. I get to teach 2 theater classes at my school currently, and I taught theater for about 12 years at my other district. So I really enjoy theater because I get to see kids. I get to see a different side of kids. I love teaching English. That's a passion for me, and I love, teaching kids how to write. But getting to see them come out of their shell and actually create characters and do physical comedy that you would never expect from kids, that's been really enjoyable. And my theater classes always become like a big family. Even kids who would never really talk to each other or get along outside, like everyone in the room really becomes sort of like family, and everyone's super accepting of everybody. And it's just a really nice it's always been a really nice class. And it's always fun to see. This year I have a kid who, when he first came in, he's just totally stoic. He has no expressions. And he told me he wanted to be an actor. And I was like, oh, I don't know how this is going to work, you know? And then he got his part and he just blew me away. He takes a little bit to process when he thinks about things. So when he talks to you, he has this very stoic, still face. But then once he's figured out where he's going, so once he gets lines memorized, he just becomes this totally different character. And he came alive on the stage and was literally the funniest character I've ever seen. He made the whole play, and I was just laughing every single time he got up on stage. And that's probably the best part about it, is seeing kids in that different light that you wouldn't see necessarily in an academic basis.
You're doing so many things that connect people. And this is absolutely amazing. You've got to be I'm so excited about the things that you do. So inspiration is really all about who you are and what you're doing. And I'm excited to see more of your work. Let's go ahead and share with our viewers how they can get a copy of all of your books.
Absolutely. So the Heartbeat series is available on Amazon, and it's also available on Barnes & Nobles and pretty much any place you can buy books. You can find it. I don't know, sometimes third parties take them on and they get posted on all these strange sites. But the easiest way is if you Google my name, if you search my name in Amazon, because when you search by title, they don't always come up the way they should. But if you type in Lorana Hoops in the search line, all of my books will appear. And you can even see the pre-order for The Wishing Stone. The cover I have up there right now is not going to be the full cover. My illustrator's still working on it. But The Wishing Stone is going to be released in the next couple weeks as well. And then I'm finishing the second book for that. So if your kids love the Magic Treehouse books, you should check this one out because it's pretty similar. And all the kids that I've had beta read for it have really enjoyed it. So all of those books are available at Amazon. You can also go to any bookstore and you can ask for them there. And then you can get them through Barnes & Noble's online. I think they're also on Nook as well. And you can get them through, they'll be up on Smashwords pretty shortly as well. So.
Excellent. This is exciting. And a lot of times we forget about Smashwords. You know, we hit the big ones, but Smashwords kind of gets put under. Now, are you doing any blogs or anything like that?
I do have a blog. My blog is 2heartbeats.org. So the 2 spelled out, TWO, heartbeats.org. And currently my blog is basically a lot of book reviews. Right now I'm doing a lot of web hosting for virtual book tours. So I also do a lot of reading and reviewing of other people's books. I found some great ones and I found some not so great ones, which is what you find, you know, often when you review. So on that is where I post book reviews. I also post, there's some excerpts from my book on there as well, and links to where you can purchase the books. And then every once in a while I have my own posts as well. I also write for a more political site at eatprayvote.org. So when I get time, which hasn't been a lot lately, but when I get time and I have some political musings, that's where I post them at eatprayvote.org. So that it's a little bit different from my book life. You know, I have my author side and then I have my self side. And it's nice to keep them separated so that they don't get lumped together. But
well, this is really excellent, and I am just so excited about all the things that you're doing, and I am wishing you so much success. I told you before when we spoke that if there's anything that I can do to assist you, I will absolutely do it, and I would love to have you again on our show. Rebecca Sounds Reveille would love to have you back. And so I want to thank you, and I want to thank all of you viewers for watching. You will see us with another episode of Rebecca Sounds Reveille.